Catholic radio for the Diocese of Toledo. This is Annunciation Radio. WNOC Bowling Green, Toledo. WHRQ Sandusky. WRRO Eden Bryan. WFOT Lexington Mansfield. And WSHB Willard.
Welcome to Annunciation Radio's Faith with Reasons, the program that examines what the church teaches and why. Faith with Reasons.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to Faith with Reasons. Ron, Finn, and Shayne Stanfield are right here on this day before. Yes, the day before our Faithful Warriors Banquet. Shayne, you're going to be there at the Pinnacle on Thursday night, right?
I am. I'm looking forward to it.
It's going to be a wonderful evening. Hopefully everyone can join us. When you listen to this rebroadcast on Saturday at 10 a.m., we won't be able to tell you how it went.
But, yes, that's true. I had to think about that, Ron.
Yeah, I know.
But we were just talking before the show. I do believe that we intend to record this, so the recording should be available.
We should be able to make it available. We'll see how that goes.
Maybe as a where we put our podcast or something and online. I don't know.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, okay, we're not going to broadcast it live, obviously.
Yeah.
So, and Father John Riccardo's talks will be perfect for Lent, and Bishop Thomas's comments as well. So, I don't know. The people who are there at the banquet will hear it live.
Yes.
Is it fair to them if we play it for free on the radio later? I'm sure we'll find a way to do that. We will share that information.
Absolutely.
We have for this week a guest that we can't find. So far, I know we'll track her down, but we've talked with Kristen Van Uden before. In fact, last time we chatted with Kristen, she has just written a book about communism called "When the Sickle Swings."
Yes.
And it was a fascinating conversation. We've talked to her. She's a kind of a literary book spokesperson, for Sophia Institute Press. A lot of times, Sophia is releasing these classics. And the author is no longer with us, long gone usually, for one of those spiritual classics. And she puts the insights in it, does the editing on them, and updates them.
Yeah.
So it's always a fascinating conversation. And I know she's a busy lady. She just got married. I know last time we had her on, she had just gotten married. And we did not have her married name at the time. We do now. I don't know if we're pronouncing it right. But her married name, I believe, is Theriault. Theriault.
And we'll need to double check.
We'll have to double check that.
Yeah.
So we'll call her Kristen. So we'll keep trying to reach her. She does so many interviews that it could well be that she's on another interview and it's gone over or something like that.
That's true. Yeah. And she does promote for Sophia Institute Press.
Absolutely. So what's new with you, Shayne?
Not too much. I'm enjoying this nice weather. It's been very very pleasant. The last couple of days, it's you're tempted to put the air conditioner on in the vehicle if it's hot.
I had it on today.
Yeah. It's amazing to have this kind of weather this early, but I'm not complaining. No, it's very nice.
A little slice, not just spring, but almost summer.
Yeah, no. If we had summer with these temperatures, I would be delighted. I don't know. We didn't get too far over 70 degrees today, did we?
I think we're at 70 now.
Yeah. It's for me. This is perfect weather. I mean, I can take mid 60s, 70 degrees any day.
Absolutely.
And no rain, at least for now. I think it's supposed to get a little cruddy toward the end of the week, but I'll take this.
Absolutely. And I know you've got a lot going on around your house and in your life, so it's probably a nice change of pace to just come in here and relax a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so come take a break to get on the air and chat for sure. I am looking to speaking with Krista about these two books, especially with the new motion picture that's out there, Cabrini.
Yeah, Angel Studios and Sophia Institute Press have kind of gotten together on this, and you'll see a lot of Cabrini books and offerings out there. But today we're going to talk about two specific ones. One is kind of a spiritual classic, and then Kristen has written one herself. So, and we do have her. We've located Kristen. So let's see, Kristen. Hello, how are you?
Hello, thanks for having
good.
me. How are you?
And now we gotta ask this question for you, because last time we talked to you, just got married.
Yes. So I have a new, unpronounceable.
Now don't tell me. We're going to give this a shot, Kristen. We'll see if we get it right.
3 strikes and we're out.
Yeah, you tell us how off I am. All right. First of all, we got the Kristen Van Uden part. Okay.
Yes.
We've got
perfect.
that down. But your new last name is Therault, and I'm thinking that it's pronounced Theriault.
Wow. The first try.
Is that
Good
right,
job.
really?
Got
Really?
it exactly right. Yeah.
Wow.
Silent
I'm proud of
H, 3
myself.
syllables. It's like one of those names where outside of the French Canadian New England and like Louisiana, nobody gets right. So
Wow.
good
Well,
job.
that's wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank
And
you.
I got to tell you, it's kind of neat. This book does not come out until the 9th of April. But to see your name, Kristen, right there at the top, it really, does that look weird to you to see it that way?
Kind of, but I think it's been almost 6 months now, so I'm used to it. I'm not used to spelling it quite yet, so I always have to kind of do a double take when people need me to spell it. But
So I have to ask: is this? Did you say it's French? I don't think I've ever seen.
It is.
It is French. Yeah,
Yep.
very good. Yeah, I would have never done as good of a job as Ron did. So I probably would have gone to the 3 strikes and
good thing he went first.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I want to hear what Shayne would have said.
Yeah.
So anyway, Kristen is the author of When the Sickle Swings, Stories of Catholics Who Survived Communist Oppression, which we talked about last time you were on. That's why what we were talking about.
That's right.
She has degrees in history and Russian area studies, as well as studies religious persecution in the 20th century. She's the media spokesperson, as I mentioned, for Sophia Institute Press, and most recently edited the Cabrini Companion, A Spiritual Journey with a Courageous Woman of God, a compilation of Mother Cabrini's writings. And today we're talking about 2 books, The World is Too Small, The Life and Times of Mother Cabrini, and about your book, The Mother Cabrini Companion, which is really kind of aimed at a younger audience, correct?
No, my book is actually for adults. There is also a children's book, which is called Mother Cabrini, just Mother Cabrini, and it has a subtitle that I can't remember. But these other 2 books are both intended for adults. The biography, The World is Too Small, is a very comprehensive recounting of her life, and that's actually a reprint from the 1940s. So right about the time she was canonized, actually, written by a man named Theodore Maynard. And yeah, I was surprised to learn that she died in 1917, and then she was canonized already in 1946.
That's amazing.
So very short process, given the long-term timetable we sometimes have with this procedure. And then the book that I edited it's called The Mother Cabrini Companion, and it's really meant as a companion both to the recent film Cabrini and also to the year. So it's divided into weekly devotions with journaling space at the end of each one, so it's definitely meant to be an interactive book. And for this, I mostly drew from Mother Cabrini's own writings. So they are from her travel letters that she wrote home to her sisters while she was out establishing missions across the globe, and also a bit from her retreat notes and some of her reflections and meditations on the interior life. So they are very fascinating. I just loved to hear her advice to her sisters and also her observations of the world around her, because she saw everything, regardless of where she was traveling, through such spiritual eyes. And I love reading the saints and really any figure that I'm interested in their own words whenever possible. So that's what I did here, is I excavated some of the best spiritual nuggets from her letters and compiled it all together in a thematic devotional right at your fingertips.
Wow.
That's great, and it's so nice to be able to get close to a saint like this, and kind of learn more. And I love the fact that this movie came out, and there's so much now new interest in Mother Cabrini. So it had to have been a fascinating exercise to do all of this, and to have everything come out pretty much around the same time too, which I can't imagine you could possibly plan it as tightly as that.
Right. I know. I was given a pretty short timetable for this one, so it was a rapid fire, get to know you with Mother Cabrini over the course of like a month and a half. But yeah, I'm kind of embarrassed to say that before this project, I did not really know her life all that well. And she's somebody that I would even sometimes get confused with Elizabeth Ann Seton, for example, or other American saints, because they had such similar vocations. And she is the first American citizen to be canonized, so that is one of her things that sets her apart. Obviously not the first person from the continent, but yes, this is somebody who I just peripherally been aware of, but never really had a special devotion to. But after this project, I certainly do. And it's been interesting talking to friends and family members about their experiences with Mother Cabrini, because my grandparents, for example, I didn't really know this about them, but they both said that their parents both had great devotions to her. And when you think about it, it does make sense, because they would have been maybe even contemporaries of Mother Cabrini, or being born maybe around the same time she died, and then, of course, been very tuned into the canonization process. So she's somebody who's kind of much more immediate to us in 2024 than we tend to think.
Wow. So how exactly did this come about? I'm assuming Angel Studios approached you to do this specifically because the movie was coming out, or was this an opportunity to collaborate with them because you had knowledge that the movie was coming out, so it was a timing issue? Maybe give us a little background there.
Yes, so that was exactly it. So Angel Studios approached us to do the companion books to the film, and there had been some precedent for this. Sophia had recently published the companion to the Pope's Exorcist movie, and then earlier, many years ago, Catholic Exchange had done the Passion of the Christ companion book, actually. So this was something that was definitely we had precedent for, and I was just lucky enough to be right place at the right time and to be the one to get to put this together. Now,
there was a request for specifically for 2 books here, or was the idea basically for the world is too small, which you said it was a 1940s publication, correct? That was redone?
If I remember correctly, I think the initial plan was to have a devotional, which is what my companion ended up being, and the children's book, and then just looking at the primary sources and what was available in the public domain, we thought, why not republish the full biography, because you get a much more comprehensive, just factual accounting of her life, whereas the other 2 are a bit more spiritual and a bit more for the devotional, take it throughout the year, not necessarily something to read all in one sitting. So kind of something for everyone, depending on what you're looking for. I know ideally it would be nice to read before the film, but I always, if I go to see a good period drama, will come back and scouring the internet for information about these people. So it'll be good to have an actual resource that is a book from a Catholic publisher to be able to look through and kind of follow your enthusiasm from coming from the movie.
Mm-hmm. So was there anything about the devotional when you were putting together? And I know that you had a very short period of time to do this. Was there anything about that was very surprising to you about her life? Something that was most unexpected that you came about through her readings?
Yeah, that is a good question. I would say that I was somewhat surprised at the level of societal impact that she had. And basically, if you've seen the movie, it really hones in on her experience in New York City.
Yes,
so it's kind of this microcosm of her very first mission that she founded and all of the challenges that faced. But of course, that was only the beginning of her life. Yeah. And as she famously said to the Pope, the world is too small for what I intend to do. And she initially actually wanted to go to China and to found missions there. And Pope Leo XIII told her not to the east, but to the west, which was a surprise for her. And it turns out that she was just greatly needed in this immigrant community in New York City. But from there, she went on to really travel the world. And that is where these letters pick up, is all of those journeys post-New York, including those in the U.S. So there are letters from her trip to Denver, for example, which was something that I'd known there was a shrine to her out there, but the way she described how different that landscape was, because at the time Denver was really just this remote outpost of workers who didn't have a consistent Catholic presence and didn't really necessarily have a priest coming every week, so their faith had started to wane. And so I was really surprised by how she was able to not only minister to the poor, which is what we think of when we think of a humanitarian saint, but was also able to convert souls in a variety of different circumstances and settings. Another example of this is that on these ocean liners, when she was traveling, she would often be met with these passengers who were in the highest echelons of society, and many of them were Protestants, especially Anglicans, and they would treat her with such deference and respect, and she even managed to gain a few hopeful conversions among them, or at least plant the seeds. So she was constantly looking for ways to convert outside of the norm of what we think of with the corporal and spiritual acts of mercy.
And way back then, I mean, when it was basically only ocean travel, those trips were not short. So she would have had plenty of time on board to mingle with folks.
I know, yeah. This is something that's always fascinating me. I actually wrote part of my grad school thesis on ocean liner travel, and these were people that you really got to know over a period of at least a week, probably more for a transatlantic crossing. So there would be one meal time per day, and you would all have your table assignments. And so she really utilized each and every moment to reach these souls, despite having to struggle with a lot of seasickness herself, actually. So a lot of the letters, the parts that I kind of skipped because I was just looking for more of the spiritual nuggets. But if you read the letters in full, they're just full of, Sister so-and-so spent the entire voyage beneath deck today. And it was a struggle for her, but she powered through.
That's amazing. Our guest today on Faith with Reasons, Kristen Van Uden-Theriault, and she's written the Mother Cabrini Companion to go along with the spiritual classic, The World is Too Small, The Life and Times of Mother Cabrini. Of course, the movie, which just came out, and a lot of folks have gone and seen it. I haven't seen the numbers on the box office, but a lot of folks have seen it, and for the most part, really wonderful reviews. And just to have, I guess, the focus of attention on this wonderful saint, the first American canonized saint, and really benefit from kind of her unique perspective on things, because to see the amazing story of Mother Cabrini and how she approached things and adapted, so many I think would turn away because it wasn't what they had intended. I mean, she didn't have. She kind of went where she was directed for the most part, which is kind of humbling and difficult to do.
For sure, and this is something I think the film portrays really well, is that she was not maybe disappointed, but surprised by where her vocation actually led her. And one would think, the U.S. is, such an advanced country there, and it's a Christian country. Why would it have need for missionaries? But in reality, we have to remember that not only were Italian immigrants, unfortunately, quite persecuted at that time, just based on ethnic oppression, basically, and bias, but also the role of the church. This really is a Protestant country, and the church itself, needed strong characters to be here and to be the leadership roles, because for the most part, this waspy just influence was still very much a part of high society in the U.S. And so she definitely, once she came here, saw these needs and was able to expand that sort of prototype that she had built in New York to elsewhere.
And the hint on that in the toward the end of the movie, I do believe that they graphically depicted how her ministry spread from New York and went basically in all directions, including China.
Yes, that's right. So after her death, actually, her order did make it to China, so they came full circle, which is really beautiful.
Yeah, she finally got what she had originally intended.
Yes.
Yeah, that's wonderful. As far as the writings are concerned, now you said you were looking for nuggets, and I'm sure you're just combing through everything. Personal letters. Was there a diary involved?
So for the most part, I relied on her letters to her sisters, which are from all of her letters that are available. I thought that they were the most introspective, because she is still, of course, serving this role as spiritual mother to them,
yes,
even though she's not physically with them.
Mm-hmm.
So she's really making sure in her letters to include all of this advice and encouragement, and I think on topics that are quite universal. So in reading through some of them, obviously, like on her meditations on the virtue of obedience, for example, that's something that is quite clear that she's speaking to those who have a religious vocation. But in others, they're really something that can be applied to anyone despite your state in life. And so those were kind of forming the bulk of my sources. And then I also drew from her retreat notes, which is called Journal of a Trusting Heart. And there was one source that I really wanted to use, but it was only in Italian and in Italian script, so it was her very handwriting. And I just simply did not have the time to translate that full thing yet.
Yeah.
Do you have an intention to do that?
Not immediately, but if the opportunity presents itself, then I sure would be interested.
That would be a fascinating work. Was there anything that you found as a favorite?
The favorite, I think I really like her meditations on the ocean. I know that it seems like more of a worldly topic, but she had this finesse where she was able to see everything through the eyes of heaven. And so she specifically talks about how the ocean reflects the inner state of the soul and vice versa, and has this really powerful imagery where if they go through a storm, she'll tell her sisters, okay, the sea right now represents what a soul in the state of sin is like. It's full of turmoil and, strife and doesn't know, where it's going, and et cetera. But then when the sun breaks through and the ocean calms down, it is representative of a soul in the state of grace, which is tranquil and beautiful and peaceful. And she also said that on a voyage, one of the captains approached her and said that she had the calmness of someone with a clear conscience. And so that was just something that I don't think we take the time to do really anymore in our daily lives, is to just meditate on these very daily things, such as nature around us, and how we can incorporate that into the spiritual life with all the distractions that we have. So I thought that was a really beautiful way to incorporate some of that thinking into our own prayer.
And certainly all the time that she spent on board those ships. I mean, this would have been just a fantastic reflection of hers, too. It might have occurred over a period of time, who knows. But
yes, she had ample opportunity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But it's a great view into her spirituality, how she's observing, nature and putting her spiritual life and melding it into it,
Right, and another thing that comes through a lot is her complete trust in God, because not only with the logistics of founding her missions and all of the bureaucracy she had to fight through, but even such simple things as the voyages where she describes the trust of God going through a storm where her sisters were afraid and she had to comfort them. And then also, really interestingly, there is a scene where the ship goes through an iceberg field. And of course, this is before the Titanic disaster had happened. So this is still the golden age of ocean liner travel, but not without peril, of course. And she discusses how our Lord delivered them from that trial. And this was an inspiration, obviously, to the other passengers who were thinking upon really more worldly terms.
Wonderful. And your book, which comes out also on April the 9th, is just a great, really devotional that people can use on a weekly basis. Really, you bring in, along with that movie, bring in the story of Mother Cabrini here to us in the here and now, and we get to follow her footsteps, kind of toward a life of deep love and unstoppable faith. And as you mentioned, all these writings that she had that you're drawing from and kind of putting in these teachings in this weekly devotional. Now, were a lot of these quotes before she founded the order, or does this kind of, I don't know, they're not in chronological order, right? They're just based on various lessons?
So they're all after she founded the order, and they are all, for the most part, after the events in New York City. So they basically pick up where the movie leaves off, basically.
Beautiful.
And she actually had a religious vocation for a lot of her life, and unfortunately was quite sick when she was a child into her young adulthood. So she was actually denied entrance into one of her preferred orders of choice. So ended up to be a good thing, of course, in the end, because she does found her own order, the Missionary Sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, and they end up being the first female order to really embraced missionary activity at this scale.
So if we're looking at the New York incident, was pretty much at the beginning, correct?
Yes. So this was the first mission that she established right after she obtained permission from the Pope.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it was kind of surprising to her that New York would be the most needy, but it turns out that is definitely where she was needed the most. And then from there, she never abandoned New York. So her sisters stayed there as she traveled throughout the globe and served as kind of a home base until Chicago became that home base. But to this day, there's the Mother Cabrini Shrine, which I'm really hoping to visit, which is actually right near the Met Cloisters.
Wow. So the maybe I'm asking the same question again, but I know the mission, the very first mission was New York City, but that wasn't or was the founding of the order. Wasn't she a mother, and didn't the order exist in Italy before she sailed to New York?
Right. So yes, she did found the order first in Italy, and then it just became a question of where will our first mission actually be?
What will we do? And then that was the order to go to New York. And from what I remember in the movie, the very first thing was to collect the kids. They need an orphanage. She saw that immediate need, but then it was to obviously educate them, and then she discovered the need for hospitals.
Yes, and schools became a very important component of her missions because really her goal was to form the whole person and to ultimately secure the salvation of souls rather than purely focus on humanitarian work in this world. So she knew that it would be useless to help save someone's life and bring them out of poverty if she wasn't also providing for their eternal life. And so schools were just a great way to be able to provide a solid Catholic formation because, as we know to this day, the function of a good Catholic school is not only to provide a good education in subjects, but also to help form and develop the soul. And so this was one of her goals, is to be able to provide a solid formation so that when these children grew up, they would still have the faith and have that gift of faith, even past her own death or past her sisters perhaps moving on. So this was something that she really took a long view towards. And of course, with her legacy, with many of these institutions still existing, and now there's Cabrini University even in Pennsylvania, she definitely has provided for the education of hundreds of more souls even past her death.
And that's just amazing.
Sure is.
Yeah.
And when you consider, she crossed the Atlantic 24 times during the course of all of this. And in addition to, obviously, schools, even hospitals opened under her tutelage, so to speak. So a fascinating woman, Frances Xavier Cabrini, Mother Cabrini. And we're going to take a little break here, Kristen, but we'll be back and we'll talk about both of these books, The World is Too Small, The Life and Times of Mother Cabrini, and The Mother Cabrini Companion. Our guest is Kristen Van Uden-Theriault. We'll be right back here on Faith with Reasons.
Go forth and preach the good news. It's not just a suggestion. If you want to take more seriously the command of Jesus to share the gospel with those around you, consider joining St. Paul Street Evangelization. It's a grassroots organization that brings the Catholic faith to the streets in a non-confrontational way. Visit our website, www.streetevangelization.com, to learn more. And don't forget to like us on Facebook. It's time to do our part.
Greetings in the Lord, everyone. The theme chosen for our 2024 annual Catholic Appeal reflects the Diocese of Toledo's participation in the National Eucharistic Revival. Through the Holy Eucharist, we experience that Jesus Christ, who is the same yesterday, today, and forever. I encourage you, dear folks, to be as generous as you can, so others can be served in the name and in the person of Christ Jesus, allowing our ministries and missions to reflect Jesus, our Eucharistic Lord, throughout our 19 counties. May God bless you for your charity, your support, and your active involvement, as together we strive to live as missionary disciples, nourished by our Lord, who gave us his flesh for the life of the world.
Here in our diocese, we're blessed to have a bishop who takes time each week to respond to his flock. Bishop Daniel Thomas is eager to answer your questions about the faith, diocesan life, and issues impacting our Catholic faith. We're recording the next 3 installments of the Bishop's Corner very soon, and we need to hear from you. Now is the time to send your questions at Annunciation Radio's app or website, or email bishop@annunciationradio.com. Include your name and your parish or town, then listen for his answer on the Bishop's Corner.
Now, back to Faith with Reasons here on Annunciation Radio.
Hey, welcome back here. Shayne Stanfield. I can't say my own name. That's
a mouthful to try to pronounce Stanfield, I know.
Yes.
You got intimidated.
Yeah. And, of course, you just heard Ron Finn, and we're blessed to have Kristen Van Uden-Theriault. Theriault.
There you go.
Yes, I need Ron back for the pronunciation. Kristen's the author of "When the Sickle Swings." I think that was the last time we had you on the show. Stories of Catholics who survived communist oppression. You have degrees in history and Russian area studies, and also religious persecution in the 20th century. You're the media spokesperson for Sophia Institute Press. And, of course, we have you on today to talk about your most recent work with Sophia Institute, and this would have been Angel Studios as well. The Cabrini Companion. It's a spiritual journey with a courageous woman of God, and it's a compilation of Mother Cabrini's writings. And I think we just kind of skated over the structure of this book. Let's cover that again. How it's put together. These are devotionals. You've mined her writings, a number of her writings, which were mostly letters, basically letters that she prepared to send after her time in New York as her ministry was growing, and you were looking for nuggets to compile this devotional. So I'll let you take it from there.
Yes, so basically it's set up week by week. So this is something that you can take the full year to work through if you'd like. You can also gobble it more quickly, and nothing's stopping you from going at your own pace. Mm-hmm. It's somewhat of an unstructured devotional in that the meditations are provided and then just a free journal space is provided. Mm-hmm. So I know a lot of devotionals are a bit more structured where they have certain prompts and ask you to perform certain actions, etc. So this one is more of a go at your own pace. And each week has a separate theme, so I basically the themes emerged as I read the letters. I knew, or I could suspect what some of them would be, so I knew missionary zeal would be of great importance to her, obviously. And there are really subcategories within that because she discusses and she quotes one of her favorite saints whose name she took, St. Francis Xavier, who is a great missionary himself. She quotes him to her sisters, and I'll paraphrase here, but he said something to the effect that zeal must be tempered with love, and that this is how Jesus preached to others, that charity and zeal were at the center of his ministry, and so they must be the same way, and that zeal on its own without love is basically useless to their vocation. So she was able to really give a lot of insight into how they can personally live out their vocations, but also to these topics at large.
Wonderful. And how much time do you spend for each week's devotion? Of course, the book isn't out yet. It's April 9th, so I believe it is April 9th. So if for someone looking at this book, are they going to be spending several minutes or quite a bit of time reading each of these devotionals? Are they multiple pages, or is there something simple that you've pulled out and then you're giving your own commentary?
So they're relatively short, actually. I'm envisioning people will use this weekly during adoration, for example, or maybe after Mass on Sundays, as they set aside time for weekly prayer and devotional. You could also break it up into days if you so chose. But this, I would probably say maybe a half hour or less per week, depending. It is what you make of it. So just reading through them quickly, you'll get it quickly. But trying to write your own thoughts out on that of course can be really personal.
But you obviously want to take your time with this, as with any devotional. I mean, you don't want to race through it. You're not reading it like a novel. Right. And it's great to have that journaling space too, because things pop out, and it's great to jot those things down.
Right, and I found really interesting that my supplementary source was her Journal of a Trusting Heart, which is her spiritual retreat notes, and she always preached the importance of a balance between the interior life and external charitable works, which I found really interesting because, again, quoting from Francis Xavier, she discusses that you basically have to fill your own vessel before you can give to others, and that in order especially to bring the faith to a group of people that may have, not be familiar with it at all or be somewhat unschooled in the faith, you really have to not only have a strong intellectual understanding, but also the spiritual formation and just the clarity of vocation. And that's something that obviously, just from her very presence, people could sense this closeness to God that she had and her really just beatific joy in her heart. And that actually won probably maybe more conversions than any sort of teaching or persuasion that she might have engaged in. It's just her demeanor. So she found it very important to make sure to tend to your own spiritual life while you're engaged in this work. And so I like how we were able to include some of her personal devotions that she herself made during retreats, which are, not many of us have time to do retreats the way that she could, but devotionals and taking time each week to do almost a mini retreat can kind of be a supplement for that in our busy lives.
So we touched on this a little bit on the first half hour, but combing through all these letters, you're basically reading your own version of a biography of Mother Cabrini. You're seeing a very interesting aspect of her life. She's communicating probably a lot of what she's doing at that present time in these letters. Of course, while you mentioned previously, she's trying to deal with the spiritual needs of the sisters, in her order. So you're learning a lot about her just from the letters themselves.
For sure. And sometimes I would find myself backtracking to look something up and when was that? Did that actually happen? And cross-referencing with other sources on her. But it it was really interesting to read this process in her life, because one of the things that she also constantly preached, and I write about this in my introduction to the book, is that conversion is not only an external experience and process, but also an internal one. And so while kind of going off of my last point, while she obviously sought the conversions of others, she, like many of the saints, never considered her own conversion to be fully complete.
Oh.
So she writes, for example, early on in one of her journeys back and forth between Europe and New York, that the skin had begun to peel off of her face, which we can presume was just a bad sunburn from being above deck, and that she had begun to peel and change like a serpent. I was like, wow. That's interesting imagery. And it was just fascinating because obviously she was already such a holy woman, and this was quite far into her career, but she herself never perceived herself as that holy. And that's just the humility that we see of the saints, is that they never think that they're done, and the holiest among us will often think that they're the worst sinners just because they have this true conception of sin. So it makes me think of other saints' diaries that I've read, like St. Gemma, for example, a couple of years ago, also had this sense of herself that, oh, I'm still a horrible sinner, I still need to change. And just this constant process of conversion, almost as an upward spiral towards heaven rather than a one-time yes or no.
Amazing. And of course, she was kind of sometimes overly strict and real stern, I guess, in some ways. And to be able to come to all these challenges that she faced, and as we mentioned, all these ocean voyages, but then once on land, you got to get from one place to another, and she was all over the world pretty much, France and Britain, Spain, Latin America, sometimes by muleback, various ways that she would get around. So she was a determined woman. There's no question about that. And these writings, I'm sure, capture some of those personality, I'm not going to say quirks, but traits that she exhibits.
I think they do, and this is one of the debates I've seen about her portrayal in the movie is how do we portray a strong woman? And I think with many of the Catholic saints, you can tell that they're strong and that their strength comes from God, and just like with male saints. But she had this ability to be both meek and motherly, and also extremely tenacious and not taking no for an answer, and willing to go head-to-head with the bureaucrats in New York City, which I don't think any of us would envy that position of hers. But also at the end of the day, being able to be this very loving spiritual mother, both to the orphans and to her own sisters. So she really exhibited that true vocation of motherhood, which, as any mother will know, is full of unseen strength for the most part, and also this very loving demeanor.
Well, and she had a wonderful devotion to the Eucharistic heart of Jesus, and certainly Mother Cabrini was given the gift of mystical vocation. She encountered, the miraculous. So just cooperating with God's will sometimes is easier said than done, isn't it?
Yes, and yes, it's always beautiful to read the saints in their own words and to discover that our favorite saints have, in turn, their own favorite saints. And among those, of course, for her was a great devotion to the Sacred Heart, so much so that her order is devoted to the Sacred Heart. And that informed a lot of her personal prayer growth and development. So many of the retreats she undertook were just full of these beautiful meditations on the Sacred Heart and renewing her devotion to the Sacred Heart. And with that, of course, this pantheon of saints that she took inspiration from, such as Francis Xavier and other missionaries. And ultimately, of course, they're all pointed in the same direction, but certain traits speak to some more than others. And it's just really interesting to see. And it's on the other end, too. I read recently that Mother Teresa actually took inspiration from Mother Cabrini in her work. So these ripple effects throughout the ages are just amazing.
Yeah. So this other book, The World is Too Small. Just to recap, we mentioned in the first half hour, this is a 1940s publication. That was it. How was it changed? Was it simply reprinted by Sophia, or were there things done to enhance the book because of the movie?
Basically, just a reprint. So we have, of course, the beautiful movie covers on each of the books.
Yes.
I love, because it's just such a visually arresting and appealing film, which, kind of a side note, is very difficult to do, especially for period pieces, to get all the costumes correct and the setting right. And so I was really blown away by that aspect of it. But in terms of the interior, no, not much was changed. This is just basically a reprint of the original. And we also have added a new foreword by Cardinal Dolan, actually, which is exciting because, of course, that New York City connection.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So this, you said this is a pretty thorough biography of Mother Cabrini, and I'm not sure if you know anything of the author, Theodore Maynard.
I don't actually. I assume he was either somehow connected with the canonization process, or obviously was drawing from the evidence that was being produced in favor of her canonization, and was a scholar somehow, but I actually don't know much of his background.
Okay, and she was canonized, I see, in 1946, so this would have been right around that time, if it's
exactly.
A 1940s publication, sure. So what can you say about her early life? I mean, what do you think led her to this vocation?
So she was born in 1850 in the Lombard region of northern Italy, and she grew up in a somewhat impoverished household, not in dire poverty, but definitely a humble beginning. One of several siblings, and really the defining aspect of her early life that I could find, it was this illness, and this seems to be something that we see with many of the saints. So again, I think of Saint Gemma, who also had an illness which actually prevented her from joining any convent, so she had to live her vocation really out in the world. And Mother Cabrini, luckily, was able to found her own order and to power through till the age of 67, I believe. So actually quite a long life, especially during that period with illness. And she died in 1917, so kind of right on the brink of the Spanish flu epidemic, and an impressive amount for someone whose childhood was plagued by illness. And so, yeah, it's tough to speculate. Her vocation, obviously, she grew up in a religious family, and so many of the saints are Italian. It's just that beautiful Catholicism that permeates the culture. I was lucky enough to go to Italy as part of my honeymoon this last year, and it's just amazing to see the roadside shrines and how it's just a truly Catholic country, which is so different than what we experience in the U.S. So she was clearly saturated in daily life of the faith, and also would have had interactions with sisters throughout her own education. So something in that spoke to her.
So the movie hinted on this. This was I can't pronounce that.
Tuberculosis.
Yes,
that's
yes,
right.
yes. So
consumption, was it consumption at that point? Or
yes, that's the same thing.
Yeah, they had another name for it, but they hinted on this with her occasional coughing, and at one point she was told by a doctor that she had a relatively short period of time to live, which ended up not being true. But I think that's probably a miraculous part of her life, because she should have been dead long before 1917.
Right, and then the scholars believe that her final death was actually due to complications of malaria. So it turns out that tuberculosis definitely weakened her, but didn't even get her in the end.
Wow, yeah, amazing.
And smallpox, yeah. I love this childhood story about her and her. She had an uncle, Father Oldini, who encouraged her to become a foreign missionary. And as a young child, he kind of knew her secret childhood game. She used to fill paper boats with violets and set them loose in the river, as she pretended that the violets were missionaries going to convert people in the far-off lands.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that. That's actually, that's in the children's book, too, and I had wondered if that was real. So that was actually from her list. Amazing.
That was actually a scene in the movie, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yes,
Yep.
I remember seeing the paper boats with the flowers in there.
Wow.
Yeah, and I don't know.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I don't know how they played that in there, but maybe there were other kids, maybe the orphan kids were playing. I do remember seeing that in the movie.
I love that. And that reminds me of an experience she had later on when, I believe this was somewhere in Central America. She and a few of her sisters took out some boats, and they were paddling along the river, and thousands of birds came to fly overhead and just flew with them as they paddled down the river. And they were speculating, what could this mean, of course, because it had to be symbolic. And she speculated that these were the number of souls that were going to be saved by their mission.
Wow.
And another sister said, that's too few. It will be the number of souls in this specific mission, or something like that. It was very cute to see them go back and forth about what this could possibly portend. But yeah, I love the symbology of that. And also she writes, and I include this in the introduction too, a quote about if the Sacred Heart allowed her, she would construct a vessel called the House of Christ, and she would gather all the peoples of the world into it and bring them to heaven. So kind of this Noah's Ark, just mythology and imagery, that she clearly viewed everyone on the earth as one of God's children, and just had this great desire to convert and save anyone.
Wow.
So do we know if there were any notable orphans that she saved and later grew and maybe wrote about their experience with her? I mean, do you know of anything like that?
I don't know that. There might be, and that. And now I'm fascinated to find out. But do you have any in mind?
No, I don't. I would be surprised that there weren't some that were, because they were the movie portrays them living in just horrific conditions. They were literally in sewers in New York, and to be dragged out of the sewer, cleaned up, put in basically the finest quality clothing. That was their dignity. She reflected their dignity in the better clothing, but educating them and giving them basically a life that they didn't have. And you would think that some of them would have grown and would have been impacted by that. And it would be fascinating to know if there were any out there that had written something, or maybe that they themselves ended up being quite faith-filled. And I don't know. It'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, that's a great line of inquiry, and I'm willing to bet, even if there are none who are super famous, but definitely became contributing members of society and certainly faithful Catholics, and probably have family that they can attribute to this day to Mother Cabrini turning their lives around in that way. And yeah, these generations too, it would have been probably a generation of World War I soldiers, right? And then towards the end, the generation that fought in World War II would have been being born around that time. So that's really interesting to think of, going into war with this amazing patron who will only be canonized a few years later as somebody who helped to raise you.
Now, the movie portrayed a prostitute. I'm not sure if she was. I'm presuming she was a young woman. She wasn't a child.
Right.
And was that a work of fiction, or was there legitimately somebody that followed her, because she went to Europe with her, and I don't know if this was a fictional character that they put in for.
Yeah, I would have to double check exactly, but I think she's a fictional character in the vein of this is something that could have happened because of Mother's charity. Sure. Yeah. But she was one of my favorite characters in the movie. That just the way that her life changed. She was somewhat hostile at first. Yeah. Because she just knew the status quo of her life would be turned around, and what that would mean and the consequences of that. But she really became just this amazing addition to Mother Cabrini's community, and you can see her soul healing throughout the movie, and that's kind of reflected in like the way she dresses and acts. And I thought the acting on that was really good.
I thought that maybe at some point in the movie that they may have shown something along the line where she might have even joined the order, but they didn't go that far. She was just there. So
sequel.
Yes.
Exactly. Who knows? Where are they now?
Kristen Van Uden-Theriault, our guest, and the books that we're talking about are coming out from Sophia Institute Press, April the 9th. The World is Too Small, which is the life and times of Mother Cabrini, a wonderful biography, and more. And then the Mother Cabrini Companion, as well, a spiritual journey with a courageous woman of God. And this is a compilation of Mother Cabrini's writings. So if you missed the beginning part of the show, this devotional that Kristen has put together really kind of digs deep into the profound teachings of Mother Francesca Cabrini, also recognized as St. Francis Xavier Cabrini. And really her inspirations really kind of found their way to a pen, and she wrote these reflections down, and you've captured these and put them in this devotional that people can really kind of delve into on a weekly basis, and kind of take some amazing advice from an amazing visionary woman that seemed like she could do anything.
Absolutely. She was not one to take no for an answer.
What did you think? I mean, I know there's limitations to these movies, and I don't think it was necessarily intentional. I mean, it's just limited on time and whatnot. But I'm in agreement with some critiques that numerous critiques that I've heard. They're all along the same lines. There seemed to be a void of her spirituality portrayed in the movie. And I have to agree with some of these critiques that it leads somebody from more of the secular culture of just going to see the movie that she did this on her own. She was just a strong woman, so what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's definitely a fair criticism, and I think somebody walking into this who doesn't know Mother Cabrini's background could view this through the lens of just, she's taking the credit for herself, and there's that scene at the end where she says, only a woman could have done this, or something like that. When you understand what feminism truly should be, instead of the third wave feminism that we're familiar with today, Mother Cabrini is actually a perfect example, because it's through her feminine genius, as John Paul II put it, of her motherhood especially, that she is able to accomplish so much. And of course, that is through God. So I do think that that's something that is a lot more evident in the writings than it is necessarily in the movie. So that's where I think supplementary material like these books are going to come in really importantly with reaching souls, because for what is not obvious, maybe watching the movie you can delve a little deeper and get the spiritual content and realize that this wasn't just her accomplishments, this was the actions of a saint.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you pointed out there. I mean, we as Catholics that know of her could go in there and insert that spirituality.
Right.
We know
Right.
where that comes from, but there's an audience out there that that they're marketing to, and I think they could have done a little better job in portraying her spirituality as being the drive behind the person of Mother Cabrini. Her success obviously was her faith. It was God that was working through her, and that was again a minor disappointment. By no
Right.
means, I'm not slamming the movie. I think it was just a fantastically. You mentioned earlier. I mean the level of detail with the costumes and the way things were portrayed. They did a fantastic job. And again, you're limited. You only have a certain amount of time in the movie. You can just kind of just glean over just a very little of what she accomplished. But they did that in an excellent way.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. It was not entirely accurate in that sense, but also the good that it does do, I think, hopefully is what people will take away from it. And this reminds me just of cultural conversations that are had, for example, around Mother Teresa, too, is a lot of what's focused on is just her humanitarian work and her alleviation of poverty. And, of course, all of these corporal works of mercy are amazing and good, but as Mother Cabrini reminds us in her writings, they're really meaningless without the spiritual component and doing it for love of God and love of neighbor in this more supernatural way. So it's kind of, people, in the modern day, even with John Paul II, would see any sort of Catholic action on the global scale more in these philanthropist terms almost. So it's kind of, we're trying to correct many years of that cultural shift, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And of course, there's a certain amount of justice done. I do have to say that just her outfit that she's wearing throughout the movie. She's unmistakable large cross on her chest.
Right.
So that's pretty much made clear throughout the movie.
Good catch, yeah.
Well, Kristen, it's been a very fascinating conversation, as it always is with you. Thank you so much for the work that you do, and it's clear that you dig deep and really immerse yourself in these stories. So thank you for this wonderful book, The Mother Cabrini Companion, and of course both of these books, The World Is Too Small and the Mother Cabrini Companion, available April 9th through Sophia Institute Press. Hey, extraordinary adventures of Mother Cabrini, the first American saint, visionary, fearless woman whose trust in divine providence saved souls, healed sick, and educated so many. So thank you for sharing this and your gifts with us through the writings and this conversation.
Well, thanks so much for having me again. And nice to hear from you both, and God bless.
God bless.
I'm Brian Witta.